Well, it's Speaker Johnson, so it's the same subject. But another thing that Speaker Johnson did in the last couple of weeks is visit Columbia University. Hostile territory for Speaker Johnson. If you want to watch this for 1 second, you'll see what I mean.
Anti-Israel encampments are popping up at universities all across this country. The madness has to stop. The madness has to stop. I am here today joining my colleagues and calling on President Shafik to resign if she cannot immediately bring order to this chaos.
David, what is the Speaker trying to accomplish at Columbia?
Well, number one, this is an issue that Republicans are up in arms about. I mean, just Republican voters are watching what's going on college campuses across the country. And it's no longer just Ivy League campuses. It's all over the country. And they're upset about it. They want to see Republicans act. Secondly, it's a win because we were talking about this earlier. When you have all the right enemies these days, that's just a political win. So he's getting booed and booed by all the right people. But I'd say this, too. There are a lot of Democratic congressmen that are super upset about this, that have traveled to the Ivy Leagues to show solidarity for the Jewish students that feel threatened, that are threatened because of these encampments. And so what Johnson is doing, number one, bolsters his standing within the Republican conference. They want to see action. But it doesn't hurt him with the broad number of Democrats and does not hurt him or his relationship with House Minority Leader Jeffries. And so it's just good politics, but also to the extent that Americans and voters are looking at this and they don't like what they see. I know some do, but to the extent that many don't, and they want to see the federal government active, it shows that he's leading. And I think one of the biggest developments to come out of the past couple of weeks with Johnson is that he led. He showed a minority in his conference that he wasn't going to be twisted around, and now they see him active, and that tends to reflect well on you.
Mara, was this visit to Columbia where, I mean, it's sort of extraordinary.
I call this the B-roll trip.
The Speaker of the House going to a university to call for the resignation of its president.
Oh,
it's sort of
a
like
stunt.
below his pay grade in a lot of ways.
To generate B-roll, and these you'll see.
And by B-roll, you mean like, oh, he's had all the right enemies, is what David is talking about.
What I mean by B-roll is this is going to be B-roll in ads.
Right.
You know, what you're going to see in the fall. This is the Republicans' equivalent of the George Floyd protests.
Right.
You know, they want to show that campuses are in chaos because part of making Biden look weak is to say he can't do anything about the chaos in the world, the chaos on campus. And you're going to see these pictures.
But I just want to add that Republicans pull these stunts all the time, and people look at them and they say, this is a stunt. But this is actually a situation where many people across the political spectrum, people that will never vote for Republicans, believe this is a problem and don't necessarily see this as a stunt.
Stunt does not. Stunt, people like stunts sometimes. I want to hear Laura on this. Yeah.
I mean, I guess yes, that's true that there are some across the political spectrum that would be happy with what Speaker Johnson did, but I am kind of questioning what voters actually he thinks he might be winning over. Does this rally the base? Yes. Does this win over young voters? No. Does it win over, polls have shown that a majority of Americans actually think that Israel has gone too far in their actions against Gaza. And so that's why you've seen President Biden start to shift his rhetoric over the course of the last few months.
That is true, but I want to mention this poll, a very interesting poll from the Institute of Politics at Harvard. It shows that the Israel-Palestine issue, this is a poll of 18 to 29-year-old voters, despite what we're seeing on some campuses, it's not ranking high in their list of interest. If you look at the list, these voters are more interested and more preoccupied with gun violence and protecting democracy and reproductive rights, abortion issue, education, immigration, jobs. All these come out ahead. So the question is are we? Part of me wonders if we're paying so much attention to Columbia because half the journalists in America went to Columbia, right? And it's easy access to the media in Midtown.
Well, there was another poll this week, and it was a poll of House Democrats, and they voted 5-1 for the Israel aid, and then the Senate, only 3 Democrats, I believe, voted against the overall package. Right. And that means that, yes, there are visible pictures, it's very combustible, it's a remarkably volatile moment on campuses, but among the elected Democrats, they are 5-1 in favor of unconditioned aid for Israel. Now, that package also included $9 billion of humanitarian aid for Gaza. So a lot of Democrats who might be concerned with how far Israel's going can say, look, I voted for that because I want the money to go to humanitarian aid. But in any case, it's interesting that the division among Democrats on Israel was not nearly as deep as one might have thought it would be.
Right.
And
go ahead.
just on young voters, I was just in Michigan and I spoke to a group of young voters across the spectrum. And so watch NewsHour next week because we'll have that on our air. But, you know, yes, there was one voter who Biden has clearly lost. She voted for him in 2020. She goes to Michigan State University. She says she's not going to vote for him again because of Gaza.
Who's she going to vote for?
She may not vote, or she may just protest vote. She's not going to vote for Donald Trump. And then there are the other young voters who say that, yeah, they are concerned about Gaza and Israel and Hamas, but that their main issues are, to that poll that you showed, Jeff, are abortion, it's democracy, it's economy, it's a range of other issues, which I think might be getting lost a bit in D.C. because of what we're seeing play out across college campuses.
David, you also were traversing Michigan recently. You guys
We waved.
Yeah, you waved. And I'm wondering what you found in terms of the relative importance of this issue compared to other issues.
Yeah, it was really interesting. In conversations I had with Democrats and Republicans, insiders working to elect their respective nominees, the first issues they would mention to me were bread and butter issues. For Republicans, it was inflation and immigration and the problems we're having at the southern border with the gaming of the asylum process. Democrats were talking about abortion rights, reproductive rights, and issues like democracy and the concerns about Trump. And then I would say, oh, and what about the president's policies vis-a-vis Israel and the war in Gaza? Oh, yes. And then they would get into that and talk about that. But they didn't necessarily see those issues as deciding. Now, I will say that Republicans look at the problem that the president's having with Arab American voters in Michigan, and they believe that a serious depletion of votes from his coalition could cost Biden the state ultimately, but they don't think that the president's in any risk of losing the Jewish vote, no matter how much his rhetoric were to shift on Israel.
Right.
And what I heard from Arab Americans was, well, his rhetoric may have shifted, but his policy certainly
The money's
has
still going
not.
in. Right.
And they notice that, and so ultimately, I think the president has to make a decision about exactly what kind of campaign he wants to run.
Quickly for the both of you, is Michigan the toughest swing state right now for Biden?
I believe it is.
Hands down.
Yeah.
I mean, other than the Sun Belt states.
Wait, do we have a total consensus around the
Of the
table?
blue wall, of the
the
three
blue
blue
wall
walls,
states.
yes,
Yes.
but Arizona and Georgia.
Although,
Although,
you
ironically,
There were problems in the Sun Belt,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the
I
blue wall
agree with
states,
that.
his
Wait.
toughest.
I think
Peter?
he needs to win Michigan to win, but it was interesting that I was in Michigan as well, and her.
What's going on in
I don't
Michigan
know.
this
It's,
week?
well, who
Was there a
knows?
meeting that
something
nobody
else
invited me
happening.
to?
Yeah,
Jeffrey, the
exactly.
delis are amazing.
Yeah,
No, I
no,
agree.
it's like
No, I agree.
I missed something.
What I was told is of the 100,000 Democrats who voted uncommitted in that primary as a protest or what have you against Biden, Democrats there worry about a half of them won't come back to him. Now, they're not going to go to Trump. You're right. I mean, not going to go to Trump. The
Well,
question is they stay home or they
That's
don't,
the
they
same
vote
thing
for
as a vote for
candidate.
Trump as far as the
Well,
Biden
of course,
campaign is
Of course.
concerned.
But having
Yeah.
said that, there was a poll this week that said of the swing states, Trump was leading in all of them except for Michigan. The only place Biden was ahead by 2 points. So it's early to say. And the other thing is, in terms of the war, you know, it depends on what happens with Rafah. Right now, there's actually not a lot of war going on compared to where it was.
Right.
If this were to somehow cycle down, if they got a deal, that's a big if. You know, by September when people are voting, it's possible people are looking at other issues as more acute at the moment.
There's a
We
lot
just
of
don't
energy
know.
in Israel now. There was new video of an Israeli hostage who
Yes.
people thought might have not been
Yes.
healthy, but is there. He lost an arm, but
Right. He's alive.
and that's caused another kind of round of we got to get a deal,
Right.
which obviously militates against.
And the Biden administration made clear this week that they think it's Hamas, not Israel, right now that is blocking that deal.
Right.
That's an important statement for them to make.
Right.
But still, people want to see this over, and the question is, can they make it happen?
Let us leave Michigan, if you can bear it, and come back to New York just to talk about the trial, the first week of testimony in the first trial ever, criminal trial of an American ex-president. Mara, what did we learn so far?
Well, we learned that the prosecution has a very elaborate story to tell. and they're telling it about how all these people helped Trump.
There's a lot of spit on that ball.
Yeah.
When you say elaborate, you mean hard to
I
sell?
think it's complicated, but the job for the prosecution is not just to explain what catch and kill is, which is where you pay somebody to not go to the press and tell their story, but also how those things were illegal or supported an illegal scheme. And that's what they have to do. And the judge doesn't seem to be very happy with the Trump lawyers or with Trump himself. He keeps on violating the gag order. But overall, this case has been considered the weakest one. And I still think it is.
Right.
You know, we have a long way to go.
Well, one thing that's striking about the case to me is just how much, when you talk to prosecutors and other legal experts, that Trump is being treated differently than any other defendant that would be in a similar case, which is that the amount of gag orders he's facing, the amount of reprimands from the judge for attacking, prosecutors for attacking family members of the judge, all of that, a similar defendant would probably already be in a cell.
Yeah.
In jail.
Right.
And Trump isn't at all.
Peter, we'll end it on this question. Do you think that this might actually be the only Trump trial we see before November? Obviously, there's Supreme Court issues that we're watching, but is this it?
I think as we end the week, that's what it looks like. This is the one trial we're going to have completed by Election Day, and the Supreme Court's deliberations this week were very interesting, very important. We can talk about that, but the core takeaway from that is it's likely to continue to drag out long before the election. We won't see a trial on that one until next year.
Quickly,
look,
Mara,
Trump's tactic is delay, and on that one, he's succeeding. His strategy is also to undermine faith in the justice system, and I think he's probably making some headway there. But look, Democrats have a deus ex machina problem around Trump. They think that Robert Mueller was going to save them. Now they think, Jack Smith will save them. Prosecutors and judges are not going to determine Trump's fate. Voters will.
And voters know Trump.
Yes.
And voters are deciding based on what they know already. No, it's a very good point.
Yeah.
It's been a great conversation. Thank you very much. Unfortunately,